Joseph Conrad's novel Heart of Darkness is not just a story about colonialism, it is a Gothic novel. Today, we will discuss why. We will look at Gothic elements in the story. We will also see how these elements create horror. By the end, you will understand why the novel still matters today. The Gothic novel began in the 18th century. The first Gothic novel was The Castle of Otranto, published in 1764. Gothic novels have certain features. They include far off places, nightmares, visions, darkness, ghosts, and doomed characters. Early Gothic novels used external monsters. These monsters lived in castles or dungeons. But Gothic novels changed over time. By the 19th century, the horror moved inside. The monster became psychological. The demon became the daemon, a dark part of the self. This is called psychological Gothic. Heart of Darkness belongs to this tradition. It is not about ghosts in castles, it is about the horror inside human beings. Many scholars have studied Heart of Darkness. They have looked at politics, history, and colonialism. These readings are important, but they miss something. They miss the horror. Conrad himself wanted to make readers feel. He said his task was to make you hear, to make you feel it is, before all, to make you see. He wanted to create an experience. The Gothic genre helps us understand that experience. When we read the novel as Gothic, we focus on dread. Dread is the main feeling in Gothic literature. Heart of Darkness is full of dread. Marlowe, the narrator, feels it from the beginning. The reader feels it too. Let us look at specific Gothic elements in the story. First, the frame narrative. Heart of Darkness uses a story within a story. Marlowe tells his tale to friends on a boat called Nellie. This is like other Gothic novels. In Frankenstein, Robert Walton hears Victor's story. In Wuthering Heights, Lockwood hears Nellie Dean's story. In The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, the mariner tells his tale to the wedding guest. This structure creates distance, it creates intimacy. We hear Marlowe's voice directly, but we also have another narrator. This makes the story feel like a confession. Conrad called the novel his confessional. Second, darkness and night. The title itself tells us darkness matters. The story happens in the dark. Marlowe travels into the African jungle. The jungle is dark and mysterious, but the darkness is also inside. Marlowe says the real darkness is in the heart of man. At the end of the novel, the Thames River looks dark. The narrator says it seemed to lead into the heart of an immense darkness. The familiar has become strange. This is the uncanny. Third, the ghost of Coutts. Coutts is dead when Marlowe returns to Brussels. But Coutts haunts Marlowe. Marlowe has visions of Coutts. He sees Coutts opening his mouth voraciously as if to devour all the earth. He hears Coutts cry, the horror, the horror. Coutts is like a ghost. He lives on in Marlowe's memory. This is a classic Gothic element. The dead do not stay dead, they return to torment the living. Fourth, nightmares and dreams. Marlowe says he is living a nightmare. He says, I am living in a nightmare. The journey feels unreal. Events happen without clear meaning. Conrad uses a technique called delayed decoding. We see things before we can understand them. For example, Marlowe sees black shapes in the forest. Later, he realizes they are dying workers. The confusion creates unease. We feel lost, just like Marlowe. Fifth, the grotesque. The novel has grotesque images. These include heads on stakes. These include dying men in the groove of death, images that shock the reader. They are not realistic, they are gothic. They exaggerate horror to make a point. Sixth, the damned soul. Kurtz is a damned man. He had noble intentions. He wrote a report for the International Society for the Suppression of Savage Customs, but he became a tyrant. He allowed people to worship him. He performed unspeakable rites. Kurtz represents the fall from grace. He is like a Gothic villain. He is intelligent, powerful, and evil. His final words are a judgment on himself. Now let us connect the novel to important theories. These theories help us understand the Gothic horror. First, the uncanny by Freud. Sigmund Freud wrote about the Unheimlich. This is the uncanny. The uncanny is something familiar that becomes strange. It frightens us because we recognize it, but we also do not recognize it. Marlowe begins by saying the Thames has been one of the dark places of the earth. He makes the familiar river seem strange. By the end, the Thames leads into immense darkness. The home of civilization becomes a heart of darkness. The uncanny also applies to Kurtz. Kurtz is European, he is civilized, but he becomes a savage. He is familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. This is why he frightens Marlowe. Second, the abject by Kristeva. Kristeva wrote about the abject. The abject is more violent than the uncanny. It contains nothing familiar. It makes us lose control. It shows us a truth that could destroy us. Kurt sees the truth. He sees the horror. That truth annihilates him. He dies soon after. Marlowe almost sees it too, but he pulls back. He lies to the intended. He chooses illusion over reality. Christopher says facing the abject means facing the difference between I and other. Marlowe looks at African people. He sees that they are like yours, like himself. This recognition is terrifying. Third, the shadow self by Jung. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow. The shadow is the dark part of the personality. We try to hide it, but it exists. Gothic literature reveals the shadow. Kurtz is Marlowe's shadow. Marlowe sees what he could become. He says Kurtz is a shadow darker than the shadow of the night. Marlowe confronts his own potential for evil. Many Gothic novels show this failure of the self. The character collapses psychologically, but Marlowe survives. He reintegrates into society. Jung would call this a happy ending. Marlowe learns from his shadow, he does not become it. Fourth, The Banality of Evil by Arendt. Hannah Arendt covered the trial of Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was a Nazi war criminal. Arendt expected a monster. Instead, she saw a normal man. He was thoughtless. He lacked imagination. She called this the banality of evil. This connects to the heart of darkness. The manager and the pilgrims are thoughtless. They do not see the horror around them. They lack imagination. Kurtz has imagination. He sees too much. It destroys him. The 9/11 Commission report said the same thing. The intelligence community lacked imagination. They could not envision the attacks. Conrad understood this. He said there are two options in life. One is to be an idiot who does not see, the other is to be a convict who sees and thinks. Marlowe chooses to see, but he also chooses to live. Fifth, Ideology and the Self by Althusser. Louis Althusser said institutions shape the self. He called these ideological state apparatuses. They include schools, churches, families, and governments. Without these institutions, the self changes. Coates lives in utter solitude without a policeman. There is no warning voice of a kind neighbor. Without society, Coots becomes something else. He is still Coots, but he is also a monster. Marlowe sees this. He realizes that civilization is a thin veil. Remove the veil, and darkness appears. Marlowe makes an important distinction. He separates physical danger from moral shock. Physical danger is welcome, it is composing, but moral shock is different. Marlowe says he felt pure abstract terror. This terror had no distinct shape. It was monstrous, intolerable to thought, odious to the soul. This is Gothic horror. It comes from inside, it comes from knowing the truth about yourself. The manager and the pilgrims never feel this. They are safe, they are fools. Marlowe feels it, Coots feels it. This is why they suffer. The ending of Heart of Darkness is strange. Marlowe visits Coots's fiancée. He calls herself the intended. She asks about Coots's last words. Marlowe says Coots said her name, but Coots really said the horror, the horror. Marlowe lies. He protects her illusion. He says the truth is too dark altogether. Is this a happy ending? Some scholars say yes. Marlowe reintegrates into society. He acts like a good civilized man. He chooses the lie over the horror. But the feeling of dread remains. The reader knows the truth. The reader knows the lie. The darkness does not go away. It lingers after the novel ends. Heart of Darkness is not just a historical document. It is not just about colonialism in Africa. It is about the human heart. The novel asks hard questions. Can every person become evil? What brings darkness to light? Do we have the imagination to understand evil, or do we only see it after it happens? Conrad wrote Heart of Darkness in 1899, but his questions are still urgent. We have seen genocides, wars, and terrorist attacks. We have asked how ordinary people could do terrible things. Arendt says thoughtlessness causes evil. Conrad says imagination prevents it. Marlowe says the mind is capable of anything because everything is in it. That is terrifying, but it is also true. Reading Heart of Darkness as a Gothic novel helps us face this truth. The novel does not give easy answers, it gives dread, it gives unease, it gives horror. These are gifts. They force us to think, they force us to imagine. Heart of Darkness can be read as a Gothic novel. It has ghosts, nightmares, darkness, and doomed souls. But the real horror is not outside, it is inside. Marlowe journeys into Africa, but he really journeys into himself. He finds Coots, but he really finds his shadow. He sees the horror, but he chooses to live with the light. The novel teaches us that evil is not extraordinary, evil is ordinary. It lives in every heart. The only defense is imagination. We must think, we must feel, we must see. Conrad wanted to make us see. The Gothic genre helps us do that. We close the book, but the darkness remains. That is the power of the novel, and that is the horror.